border crossings are currently down 94%. 94% of what they were at this time last year.
I'm Stephanie Keith.
And I am Tara Manjakovic, and we are unapologetically outspoken. Hey, everybody, happy Friday. And it is a happy Friday indeed because Kash Patel finally got confirmed yesterday with a Senate vote of 51 to 49. And Stephanie, I feel like the dream team is now in place, and I feel like it just gets better and better every day.
Oh my God, this is the best news yet. I'm so excited. And I am just waiting on pins and needles to see if he truly does release the Epstein client list. So I'm watching it closely. Hopefully, we'll be able to go through that on Monday. But there were two Republicans, and no surprise, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine, who voted against him. And I just keep thinking they are making it so easy to spot who's part of like the deep state uniparty.
Oh yeah, 100%. And did you see what he posted after his confirmation?
No, not yet.
Okay, it is awesome. He said, I am honored to be confirmed as the ninth director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I swear I need glasses. Hang on. This is so ridiculous. Sorry, everybody. Okay, glasses are on. Thank you to President Trump and Attorney General Bondi for your unwavering confidence and support. The FBI has a storied legacy from the G-men to safeguarding our nation in the wake of 9/11. The American people deserve an FBI that is transparent, accountable, and committed to justice. The politicization, I can never say that word correctly, politicalization of our justice system has eroded public trust, but that ends today. My mission as director is clear. Let good cops be cops and rebuild trust in the FBI. Working alongside the dedicated men and women of the Bureau and our partners, we will rebuild an FBI the American people can be proud of. And to those who seek harm to Americans, consider this your warning. We will hunt you down in every corner of this planet. Mission first, America always. Let's get to work.
I love him. And I love that he doesn't just read a politically correct script. He just says what's on his mind. And that's why I really was worried he wasn't going to get in because the Democrats kept saying their goal was to get one of them to not get in. And so when Tulsi and RFK were in, I thought, okay, this is not good, but he's there and I'm ready. Start making arrests, Kash Patel. We're ready for it.
Yeah, hunt them down. Like
Yeah.
literally hunt them down.
Mm.
So I think one person that needs to be looked into is Democrat Senator Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island. And I want to play this clip of him speaking to reporters outside of FBI headquarters just a few hours before Kash Patel was confirmed.
And left to his own devices, Kash Patel has proven himself to be a wildly vindictive partisan. When around Donald Trump, Kash Patel has proved himself to be a sycophantic suck-up. He has multiple foreign entanglements that are not adequately explained, including Chinese interests through Cayman Islands shell corporations. This from a guy who in this building is supposed to look out against China and Russia. And last, this is the first senior law enforcement official in American history to have pled the fifth. And he has been unwilling to even explain to the Judiciary Committee what crimes it was that he was concerned about that caused him to plead the fifth. Kash Patel, mark my words, will cause evil in this building behind us, and Republicans who vote for him will rue that day.
Okay,
What do you want to
so
bet that Sheldon Whitehouse committed some of those crimes?
exactly. So like he's actually getting a lot of backlash for his comments because I guess he's the member of this like exclusive beach club that has a controversial history, I think, of like racism. And so Trump advisor Steve Cortez, he said, what did Sheldon Whitehouse come up with this pathetic line of attack at his all-white beach club? And then Benny Johnson said that he seems, quote, awfully scared of Kash Patel cleaning up the FBI. And then Trump's war room response was, you are so cringe. And I agree with all this. Like, I think anyone who is against the truth coming out is because they're implicit in corruption. And I'm sure something is going to be exposed about Senator Whitehouse. And I can't wait to see what Kash does with cleaning up the FBI.
Yeah, no, that's my theory. All of these people that have been outspoken and protesting about how dare we go after corruption, they're probably on a list of the first people that are going to be investigated. And I'm sure he's added to that list now. So good for you, Mr. What's his name? Sheldon. But more good news is that President Trump came out and confirmed the rumor that he's giving some of this money that DOGE has recouped to the American taxpayers. So this rumor's been going on for a while, but he actually addressed it. So I'm going to play the clip of what he said.
Under consideration, a new concept where we give 20% of the DOGE savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt, because the numbers are incredible, Elon. So many billions of dollars, billions, hundreds of billions. And we're thinking about giving 20% back to the American citizens and 20% down to pay back debt and pay down debt, which is, if you look at value, if it were a real estate balance sheet, the debt is tiny, but we still want to pay it down. Doesn't matter.
So that was huge because he's basically confirming, yeah, these rumors are true. So they're estimating this would be at this point in time around $5,000 that would be essentially refunded to taxpayers. And it's pretty genius because this has caused the Democrats to come out and say that they don't support giving taxpayers a refund. So you have House Representative Crockett that went on the news saying, oh yeah, she's against it. And she says, quote, we are not in the business of giving out money. And honestly, I don't know what $5,000 will do for you.
God.
Oh my God. So that clip is going viral because, first of all, her district is one of the poorest in the country. So talk about a tone deaf message. Like $5,000 could be life-changing for her constituents. So for her to say that is just, it makes her sound really bad. Second, since when are the Democrats not in the business of giving out money? That's literally why DOGE is doing what it's doing, because Democrats went rogue with their whole spending spree, handing out money like it's going out of style. And so, go
Yeah,
ahead.
but this time the money is the money that they want to go into their pockets. So of course they're
Right.
against it.
Yeah. They don't want us to get $5,000. They just want themselves to get tens of millions of dollars, which we should look into her and see what her net worth is now compared to 5 years ago.
Yep.
So, anyhow, these Democrats going out there and saying that, they're absolutely not supporting checks for American taxpayers. It's the dumbest thing they can do. I mean, I don't know a single person that wouldn't want a check after seeing all the fraud and waste and abuse with our tax dollars. So let them keep going and destroying themselves, It's ridiculous. So in a White House press briefing yesterday, of course, CNN's Caitlin Collins, who I can't stand, talk about cringe. She, of course, finds a way to turn this into a bad thing, saying, well, it could cause inflation. And so I'm going to play the clip because here's the response that followed. And then after that, Stephen Miller chimes in and gives these reporters a government 101 lesson, and it is freaking awesome.
Mr. Waltz, on these potential checks that you might send out from DOGE, is there a concern as you're thinking through this that they could be inflationary?
Oh, absolutely not. Because imagine if we don't spend government money and we give it back to people, then if they spend it all, then you're even. But they're probably going to save a lot of it, in which case you're reducing inflation. Okay, and also, when the government spends a lot, that's what creates inflation. We learned that from Joe Biden. And so if we reduce government spending, then that's reduces inflation. And if you give people money, then they're going to save a bunch of it. And when they save it, then that also reduces demand and reduces inflation.
Okay, so you're not worried about it.
It is true that many of the people in this room
for 4 years failed to cover the fact that Joe Biden was mentally incompetent and was not running the country. It is also true that many people in this room who have used this talking point that Elon is not elected fail to understand how government works. So I'm glad for the opportunity for a brief civics lesson. A president is elected by the whole American people. He's the only official in the entire government that is elected by the entire nation, right? Judges are appointed, members of Congress are elected at the district or state level, just one man. And the Constitution, Article 2, has a clause known as the vesting clause, and it says the executive power shall be vested in a president, singular. The whole will of democracy is imbued into the elected president. That president then appoints staff to then impose that democratic will onto the government. The threat to democracy, indeed the existential threat to democracy, is the unelected bureaucracy of lifetime tenured civil servants who believe they answer to no one, who believe they can do whatever they want without consequence, who believe they can set their own agenda no matter what Americans vote for. So Americans vote for radical FBI reform, and FBI agents say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote for radical reform in our energy policies, but EPA bureaucrats say they don't want to change. Or Americans vote to end DEI, racist DEI policies, and lawyers at the Department of Justice say they don't want to change. What President Trump is doing is he is removing federal bureaucrats who are defying democracy by failing to implement his lawful orders, which are the will of the whole American people.
How awesome is that?
That is amazing. I love that.
That clip, I have seen it probably 50 times since yesterday. It's going everywhere. And that's what they get for throwing around this term constitutional crisis. Now it's biting them in the ass because, yeah, he's laying out like what you learned in 8th grade in civics. So good for him.
That was
But
great.
they further explained this whole DOGE savings. They're calling it DOGE dividends. So Miller explained that after 20% of the DOGE dividends goes to the people, and then 20% goes to the national debt, the remaining 60% would go into next year's budget, and that would lower the overall spending level next fiscal year. Sounds like a great plan. That makes sense to me. That sounds responsible. But then why did Republicans in the Senate bring forth a bill to increase spending by $340 billion? And, they say it's for the military and protecting the border, okay? Which, of course, we all want to do that. But Rand Paul sounded the alarm on a Senate floor speech yesterday where he revealed that things are not what they appear to be. And he said, in one hand, we have all this savings from DOGE. And on the other hand, you have Senate Republicans that want to increase spending. So he called him out and he said, they're always saying they want to cut wasteful spending and they want to be fiscally conservative. But then they continue to increase spending, knowing full well it's going to further add to the problem. So he explained how what the Senate is doing is what they've always done, and they fail to realize that Trump is in town now and there's a new way of doing things. So he has a suggestion that rather than increasing spending, simply move the money saved by DOGE to protecting the border. And he explained how this can easily be done through what's called rescission, which would only require a simple majority, so no need for any support from Senate Democrats. But in the end, he said this additional spending bill is probably going to pass. So I think his speech was simply warning Americans that things are not what they appear to be. And for me, like hearing his whole speech, you got to listen to it. It was a long, long speech, but it's just beyond frustrating because, you think like, oh my gosh, there's finally change and they're cutting all this spending. But then no, behind closed doors, they're doing the same shit that they've always done. And I think that everyone should call or email or tag their senators on social media nonstop, demanding that they stop increasing spending. It's ridiculous.
This is interesting because the Senate passed this bill early this morning.
Oh,
and
great.
he was the only one that voted against it. Obviously, all the Democrats voted against it, but he was the only Republican senator to vote against it, and it passed. And, even JD Vance said he was in support of this bill. And so I don't know what to think about it, because on one hand, they're saying that this bill addresses, Trump's plan for securing the border and his plan for increasing the military. And there was one other thing. What was it? It was increasing border security, military, and creating energy dominance. And so they're saying they're doing what Trump wants to do. And again, with JD Vance saying, yeah, I support this, I just feel like, well, fuck,
I
what's the
just feel
answer?
like it's when it's something that they want, then they'll do the same stupid shit. And I get it. Like, I get that we need money to do those things and they have to move the money around, but they're literally in peace talks right now with Ukraine. Stop sending money to Ukraine and put that on our border. Like, there's so many ways you can go about this, which is exactly what Rand Paul was calling out, but they're just repeating the same mistakes over and over. So,
Yeah.
anyhow, I'm sure there's both sides to the story, but I think it's important that we know what's going on, you know?
Well, there's also the House bill, because I guess like the Senate bill is a two-pronged bill and the House bill is like one. And everyone thought the House was going to approve their bill before the Senate did, but the Senate did first. So I'm curious to see what ends up with the House bill and then what we end up with overall. But they're going to have to make a decision soon, because we're back in that same, clown
Mhm.
show position we're always in with, last minute budget shit.
Right.
Um, but speaking of like the border and everything, Trump signed an executive order on Wednesday prohibiting illegal migrants from receiving taxpayer benefits. And he announced that instead, all of these, hard-earned taxpayer resources are going to go to protect the benefits for American citizens, including individuals with disabilities and veterans. And he said the truth, which is that taxpayer resources have been a magnet for migrants wanting to come to the US. And it's, been fueling this illegal immigration, all based on the actions of the Biden admin. So this new executive order basically directs the head of every federal agency to identify all federally funded programs that they administer that currently permit illegal migrants to get both cash payments and then like non-cash public benefits. And that this, I mean, technically, this is all in accordance with existing law. It's the Personal Responsibility and Work Opportunity Reconciliation Act of 1996, which prohibits illegal migrants from getting these benefits in the first place. But this legislation was obviously completely ignored by the Biden admin. And I just want to point out some recent statistics with our border, because according to Border Patrol Chief Mike Banks, border crossings are currently down 94%. 94% of what they were at this time last year. And yesterday he said that over the past 7 days, Border Patrol agents have apprehended an average of 285 illegal migrants a day coming across the entire southern border, compared to the roughly 4,800 that were coming across the border every day this time last year. And he said this dramatic drop in illegal immigration is due to Trump's executive actions and closing the asylum system and the CBP One app and actually deporting people. And Borders Our Tom Homan also said that because Trump recently deployed additional troops to the border, and he also deputized Texas National Guard soldiers as immigration officers to help Border Patrol agents in the field, that this has also been a big contributor. And what's I thought was fascinating, federal data, like they went through all the Border Patrol data, and it shows that illegal immigration numbers have not been this low since the fucking 1960s. Like,
Wow.
gee, how fascinating that when you actually enforce the law, it works.
Yeah. Well, and if they had this law in place, like you said, since 1996, and the Biden
Mhm.
administration knowingly didn't follow that law, how is that not illegal? Like, how is
Right.
that okay? I mean, they are defying what's written into law. I just don't understand how they got away with it. It's maddening.
I don't understand how they got away with anything they did, but
Yeah.
I just hope we can clean it all up. Um, And then on Monday, we had mentioned the 1.9 billion in misplaced funds at the Housing and Urban Development Department, and these were funds that were earmarked for administration purposes. Well, they've now been released to the Treasury, which apparently is what's supposed to happen when funds don't get used. So yesterday, HUD Secretary Scott Turner was on Fox and Friends, and he was talking about how this was, a great mismanagement and negligence by the Biden admin for the past few years. And he said that the department is going to be canceling $4 million in DEI contracts that he said were for cultural transformation and mindset, outward mindset thinking, and subscription services. And then the Department of Energy also announced on Wednesday that they've identified and canceled more than 124 million in DEI contracts and subscription services. And according to Department of Energy spokesperson Ben Dietrich, they are just getting started with these spending cuts.
It is amazing how many DEI contracts. We really should have a tally or a total. I wonder if they have that on the DOGE website, because every episode there's multiple of them, and these are just a few departments they've been through so far. It's
Yeah,
insane.
it's adding up to billions, possibly trillions in DEI contracts. It's absolutely insane. And I have to give an update on the whole Fort Knox thing that we talked
Mm-hmm.
about on Wednesday, because have you been seeing the shit that Trump and Elon are saying? It is hilarious. Trump talked with reporters on Air Force One on Wednesday, and he basically said yeah, we're going to go into Fort Knox, we're going to make sure the gold's there, and we hope everything's fine, and if it's not, we're going to be very upset. And it was just so funny because he's just standing there on the in the doorway or something of the plane, and I would play the clip, but it was so loud, you can't, the way with our luck with clips with background noise, it wouldn't come
Yeah, wouldn't
across.
work.
Yeah, but he's just so casually talking to these reporters, and it's just, I love watching him. And Elon posted the clip on X, and he said, oh, it would be fire to do a live stream of going in, to Fort Knox. And what's interesting is Trump's Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, is it Bessent? I don't know.
I don't know.
Whatever. Well, he's insisting that the gold is all there. And he did an interview with the Associated Press on Wednesday, and he said that they've done an audit every year and all the gold is present and accounted for. And he'd be happy to arrange an inspection for any senator who's interested, which totally contradicts what Rand Paul said the other day about trying to, do an inspection for the last 10 years. And even Senator Mike Lee said the same thing, and he got denied access. So last night, during a Republican governor's reception at the White House, Trump doubled down on this whole thing and vowed that he's going to go there himself. And he said, I'm actually going on this one. All my life, I've heard about Fort Knox. That's where the gold's kept, right? We're going to open the doors. I'm going to see if we have gold there. We want to find out. Did anybody steal the gold in Fort Knox? We want to make sure we actually have, 400 tons of gold or whatever the hell it is. It's a lot of gold. I don't want to open it and the cupboards are bare. Again, I just love the way he talks, but I totally agree with Elon. This should be live streamed so that everyone can see what's actually going on at Fort Knox.
Well, and I love that Trump is not listening to Bessent and is saying, I'm going to go there myself. And I hope that, he's kind of looking at that, because remember, Scott Bessent is the guy who worked for Soros Fund Management. And George Soros financially backed this guy's startup company. So I sure as hell don't trust him. And I think Elon and Trump better live stream it just in case. And I'm sorry, but this guy just got into office, this Scott Bessent. So how the hell does he know? Was he there? Did he go see the gold? And where are these audits? Why is he the only one saying there's been an annual audit? I think he's full of shit.
It's very interesting. And I did find some other information about audits, though, because the Daily Mail reported that Mitch McConnell reportedly did an inspection of the gold reserves in August of 2017. And he took a small group there, and it included then Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin. They all went to the vault. Apparently, there's some grainy black and white photos of Mnuchin in the vault that were released to the public after they made this visit, but I don't know. And
Oh,
then
because
if
Mitch McConnell's so trustworthy. He's
right?
not corrupt at all.
And even if this visit did happen, the Daily Mail article said that Mnuchin would have been the first head of Treasury to visit the depository since 1948, which again is just fucking insane. And the article also said that the only reason that inspection in the 1970s, I think 1974, even occurred was because even back then there were conspiracy theories about the elites secretly moving the gold and the vaults being empty. So members of Congress demanded a tour, and it was led by whoever was the US Mint director at the time to prove that the gold was still there. So, yeah, we definitely need to do an audit again. And speaking of Mitch McConnell, on a positive note, he announced yesterday that he won't be running for reelection in 2026. So thank God for that. He's like 100 years old. He's been a senator for 40 fucking years. He's completely corrupt, and it's time he's out of there. And honestly, he needs to take fucking Crypt Keeper Pelosi with him. And I wish Trump could do an executive order on instituting term limits in Congress.
I was just thinking that we need term limits. And if anyone's going to do it, it's this administration. I mean, I don't know how that works if we'd have to vote on it because Congress, right now, like they would vote on it, just like they get to vote on if they get a raise or not, which is bullshit.
It should be something that America gets to vote for because
Yeah.
honestly, I would be surprised if most people didn't want term limits. I
I've
honestly
never
think
heard anyone
America does.
say they wouldn't want term limits. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just an easy way to root out corruption because the longer you're in there, the more corrupt you are. And Mitch McConnell's the perfect example of that.
40 fucking years. I mean, most people don't work any job for 40 years. It's
Yeah.
absolutely insane. I have another USAID update
Mm.
because another former official has spoken out about the agency's corruption. And this time it's Max Primorak, who was the former COO and chief assistant to the acting deputy administrator of USAID during Trump's first administration. And he did an interview with the Daily Signal yesterday where he said that USAID was basically a way for the left to wage a culture war on the world, starting with Clinton, mostly Hillary, when she was pushing the abortion narrative into the program. And then when Obama came, it shifted even more left, the whole LGBTQ and climate ideology. And then it just fucking blew up into like a full fledged mission for DEI and gender fluidity and population control and climate change and all that shit under Biden. But what's more sketchy is he said half of their budget doesn't even leave DC and that it's mostly for salaries and overhead. So if the budget's 40 billion, like 20 billion of that just ends up in the coffers of Democrat political campaigns and liberal organizations. And I guess this guy now works at the Heritage Foundation. And he said they did a deep dive into the Federal Election Commission disclosures from USAID funded organizations and staff members. And they found that 94% of donations for the State Department went to the left, and 98% of donations at USAID also went to the left. So then they started looking at all the NGOs and the contractors and where all these billions and billions of dollars were going. And over 90% of political donations were going to the left and basically just being used as like slush fund money for the left to finance their own people. And he said you could sum up USAID in one word, and that would be corruption.
I mean, that's election interference.
Yeah.
Remember, Trump had to go through, this whole legal battle in New York City because his payment to Stormy Daniels was documented differently. It should have been on one spreadsheet. It was on, whatever. But then this shit is going on. It is
Yeah.
unfreaking believable. And who knows how long it's been going on for. But I mean, look at like with Kamala, how they were painting this whole image that she was so well liked. You need a lot of money to do that. And here they're taking taxpayer money, funneling it through all these NGOs, and it ends up with Democrats. Unfreaking believable.
98%. Yeah, 98%. That's insane.
Oh, God. Well, again, I hope we see criminal charges soon, and that's why all the rats are fleeing DC right now.
Yep.
Um, but shifting gears, I have to talk about this because I'm so excited. So, DeSantis, the governor here in Florida, he's endorsing the idea of eliminating property taxes in the state of Florida. So he told Fox News, quote, property taxes are local, not state, so we need to do a constitutional amendment which requires 60% of voters to approve to eliminate them, which I would support, or even to reform or lower them. This is freaking huge because, okay, 60%, who wouldn't vote for having their property taxes lowered or removed? So, I mean, I think Newsom over in California should be taking notes on what a good governor looks like.
You know what? I need to interrupt you there for a second because
Yeah.
my cousin lives in Utah
Hmm.
and she of course is very left, but she works for the VA and she's a nurse and she really wants to move to California. And she's talking about how, the salary there is much better than in Utah. And I said, well, you better look into like property taxes and income taxes because you're going to get fucking raped with your paycheck and don't
Hmm.
expect to see more than half of it because California taxes are some of the highest in the nation.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's true. During COVID, I remember so many business owners leaving California and going to Texas. And when they were talking about how much they were taxed, it was
Yeah.
like you would think they're in Europe or something. It was absolutely insane. But, with all of this fraud and corruption that's being used with our tax dollars, I think we all should be questioning like every single tax that we pay. Like you pay taxes on your home when you buy it or when you build it, and then you pay when you sell it or when your kids inherit it. But then on top of that, you have to pay property taxes every year. So you could have your mortgage completely paid off, but if you don't pay your property taxes, they will take your home. And I've
Yeah.
always thought that was outrageous because I remember when I was a teenager in Chicago, they had increased property taxes an insane amount. And it was all over the news because there were elderly people who have had their homes paid off for decades and were getting their house taken away because on their fixed income, they couldn't keep up with these outrageous taxes. And I think about, my house, where it's almost $10,000 a year in property taxes. And that's on top of our income tax, the sales tax, all the other shit they tax us on. So it'll be interesting to see like if this actually goes on the ballot. But again, who's going to vote against that? I don't know that anyone would vote against it.
Do you have state income tax in
No,
Florida? Okay.
no.
Yeah, see, that's the same situation with Texas. Like we have very high property taxes. In fact, I read that according to the Tax Foundation, Texas has the highest property taxes in the country. And so, after everyone started fleeing blue states and moving to Texas and Florida, home prices increased and property taxes went sky high. And even US Census Bureau data shows that the median property tax in Texas has risen by 30% in the past 10 years, which is 3 times faster than the rest of the country. So I would be fucking overjoyed if Texas got rid of property taxes. But like we don't have a state income tax. I think it was on the ballot at one point. I remember it being talked about, but I don't know what happened. But just a few days ago, on Tuesday, the Texas Senate unanimously voted to advance a property tax cut. Like we have this thing called the homestead exemption that is for $100,000, and they um, voted to increase it to 140,000. So I think that would only amount to like a few $100s in savings, but it'd still be better than, how much we're paying now.
Yeah, well, the same thing happened here in Florida. I was actually reading an article on it where so many people moved here from New York. And in New York, their salaries are so much higher. So they came and just inflated the market. Like the value of my house has like doubled, which is great. until you get the property tax bill, and that's doubled as well. And what's happened is a lot of people that lived in Florida have moved. So you've had this mass group of people exiting the state because they can't afford to live here anymore. And then you have them being replaced by these, wealthy people coming from New York that want to save money on taxes and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a mess right now. And I don't know how they would fund this. Part of me wonders because so much of our property taxes goes to schools.
Same with ours. Yeah.
So part of me wonders, like, whatever Trump is planning with the Department of Education and kind of changing things, if that funding somehow shifts, maybe we could lower or eliminate property taxes. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, the tax thing in general, I think is very interesting. And remember how when Trump during his campaign, never mind, I don't know where I'm going with that.
What was it about?
I
The
don't know.
tax,
It has
paying
to do with
taxes?
taxes. Has to do with paying taxes. Okay,
Like
so
getting rid of the IRS, right?
getting rid of the IRS. Oh my
Yeah.
God, my
Hmm.
brain right now. Seriously. Don't like I'm so sorry for anyone going through perimenopause. It fucking sucks. Your brain just shuts off. So yesterday, the IRS announced that they're laying off over 6,000 employees. And so, Trump had talked about abolishing the IRS during his campaign. And yesterday, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick went on Jesse Waters' primetime show, and he said this is still Trump's goal. And the plan is for revenue from tariffs to become so massive that we no longer need the IRS or to pay taxes,
Hmm.
which would be fucking amazing.
That would be amazing. And I think it probably is the goal. They're probably obviously waiting for all these tariffs to shift so they could see exactly how much is coming in and how it all shakes out. But we have to remember too, our country ran for a very long time without taxes.
Right. Yeah.
That was whole reason it was created. People didn't want to pay the 3% tax at the time in Europe and England.
I still
So
don't understand why we don't have a flat tax.
right. Well, I think that was so. Okay, so this kind of answers the question on how they would get rid of property taxes because DeSantis is very much in line with Trump on this, and he was talking about having just a flat sales tax. So if
Mhm.
you're someone that goes and you're wealthy and you're buying more and you're getting expensive things, you're going to contribute more. And just having like a solid tax that you only pay when you purchase things. I think it's a phenomenal idea
Yeah.
if that gets rid of our income tax and our property tax.
Yeah, that would be
So we'll
amazing.
see. But okay, did you hear this story that's been going around about this guy, Leland Dudek from the Social Security Administration?
Mm-mm.
Oh, this is such a good, uplifting story. Okay, so this guy was just kind of like a mid-level manager, like a nobody in the Social Security Administration. So earlier this week, he was called into his manager's office and said that he was fired because he was helping DOGE. And so he goes on LinkedIn and writes this whole thing. And he's like, I confess that I helped DOGE understand SSA. I confess that I did move contractor money to add data science resources to my anti-fraud team, and he's like, I confess that I emailed myself publicly available documents that anyone can access. And so this LinkedIn gets the attention of all of these conservatives. And within hours, Michelle King, who's the current head of the Social Security Administration, was fired. And they put this guy, Leland Dudek, in her place. They make him the head of the whole thing. Like, how freaking amazing is that?
That's awesome. Yeah.
So Elon Musk posted on X and he says, quote, there are good people in the government that want to eliminate fraud and waste, promote good players, exit bad players. That's the right thing to do. I agree. And I guess
Yeah.
Michelle King was like one of these, career employees that Biden put in place. And yeah, it's like such a good uplifting story of like wrong being made right, you know?
I love that. Totally side note, but you just reminded me. Did you see it was something Vivek had posted on social media about it is getting a whole bunch of controversy over what he said because he was talking about how teachers should be paid according to how well they teach and not just, you get this teacher salary, but that it should be like a sliding scale based on how productive, like how well your
Yeah.
students do and how productive you are. And I honestly agree with that. And I was
Merit
curious what
based.
you think. Yeah, merit based.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that's
Yeah.
great. I wonder, I forgot about Vivek. I wonder if he's regretting everything that happened now that Doge is getting like all this publicity and everyone's kind of backing it. I still think that's so wild how he's out of the picture now.
I guess it depends whether he wins governor or not.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know, but I agree with that. I think merit based, and then I think like what they're doing here in Florida, where they're giving the funds to the child. So you decide where you want to go to school, whether you want to be homeschooled, private school, whatever, because then that forces these public schools to become competitive. You're
Yeah.
not just teaching to a standard. You actually have to do a good job and try to attract people to your school. And I don't understand a downside to that. It's ultimately going to
No.
make the school system better. So anyhow, I have a completely off topic, unrelated story, but it's freaking crazy and we have to talk about it. Okay, so this happened in the Eastern European country of Georgia. And I wanted to start with that because when I first heard this story, I thought they meant the state Georgia, like in the United States. And I was like, holy shit. But it's not. It's a country in Eastern Europe. So the Daily Mail reported that there were hundreds of women kept as slaves on what they're calling a human egg farm. And what happened was these women were lured into this farm from a Facebook ad that said they'll be surrogates for couples in Georgia who couldn't have babies. And they were promised salaries of like 11,000 to 17,000 euros. So three Thai women ended up escaping and went to the authorities and said that they were being treated like cattle and pumped full of hormones and having their eggs extracted every single month. And I guess this operation was run by Chinese nationals who were selling women's eggs on the black market and not letting them leave. Like they were locking them in there like cattle on a farm. How disturbing is that?
My God. Wow. I hadn't heard that at all. That's
Yeah, I didn't
crazy.
either. So that's pretty crazy. So don't ever click on a Facebook ad asking you to be a surrogate. Even if you're desperate for money, you just don't do it.
Oh, well, happy Friday.
Happy Friday. There's a story you can go tell everyone this weekend because how
Yeah.
freaking nuts. All right. Well, hopefully, when we're back here on Monday, we'll have the Epstein client list. We'll see.
Yes. And hopefully I don't have a major brain lapse on Monday. I feel like fucking Mitch McConnell.
Like when he just like stopped and
Yeah.
everyone's like,
Yeah.
what just happened? Oh my gosh. Well, that happens to me, and I'm not going through perimenopause, nor am I Mitch McConnell's age. So I don't even have an excuse for it. All right. Well, I hope everyone has a great weekend. We'll see you back here on Monday, and thanks for tuning in.